Ladies and gentlemen, as many of you know, we had a big change in government in Alberta. We are most excited and honored this evening to have the Honorable Jason Kenney joining us. Now, Premier Jason Kenney's numerous contributions to public life began in the early 1990s as a feisty young president of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He then won the election to Ottawa as the Reform Party MP for Calgary South East. He helped to unite and expand the modern Conservative Party in Canada, and especially growing its support among new Canadians, and held multiple cabinet posts during his first decade in government. Hold on, I'm going to need a breath for this one. Returning to Alberta in 2016, he first won the leadership of Alberta's Progressive Conservative Party, then won a referendum creating the United Conservative Party, then won an election as UCP leader, then won a seat as a legislator as a leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, and finally, in April 2019, last month, led his party to a majority government with the highest vote tally of any party in provincial history. Please join me in welcoming our Premier, Jason Kenney.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Will, and I have to say, you play a remarkable shofar. We could use that up in the legislature. Will, you and I have at least one thing in common. We have both emceed JNF dinners. I have the honor of being a JNF honoree, but also, and perhaps more importantly, I was the master of ceremonies at what I believe to be the biggest JNF dinner in Canadian history, which was honoring the Right Honourable Stephen Harper in Toronto. They packed the place out. I know some of you were there, and I welcomed everybody to Stephen Harper's bar mitzvah. We're proud of that, fellow Calgarian. Thank you so much, Will, and thank you all for your presence here tonight. Most importantly, Mazel Tov to Wynne and Harvey for this wonderful and richly deserved recognition. Two great Albertans and two great friends of Israel. So proud of you and all of your fellow honorees who are here tonight, who personify what is best about Alberta, this remarkable place of fresh starts and new beginnings with a deep culture of enterprise. It's no wonder that so many of the shtetl Jews came here 120 years ago with nothing but a profound work ethic, having fled pogroms and persecution to begin new lives, and were followed by some of the survivors in the 1940s. All of them people of great tenacity and strength of will who overcame a tremendous adversity. Whether in some of the Jewish farming colonies, you don't see many Jewish farmers in Alberta these days, or starting out with local stores and businesses, but through thick and thin, they managed, your parents and grandparents, managed to be central participants in the creation of Alberta as one of the most prosperous and generous societies on the face of the earth. And we owe so much to the Jewish community for its generosity. And one expression of that, I'd like to take some credit for Joe Gittler and the remarkable work he's done over the past 16 years with Leket Israel, because he had the great wisdom of marrying a Calgarian, Leila. And they made Aliyah 18, 20 years ago, called by the ancient call to the return to the promised land of the Jewish people. And there saw a need and reached out in the great Jewish tradition of Tikkun Olam to help those in need, and have done so now for nearly 2 decades. We are so proud of you, Joe, as a Canadian, for all that you have done for the less fortunate in Israel. By the way, I should also mention proud of the spiritual contribution to Alberta of this community. And that is why when I was sworn in as Premier and we swore in Alberta's new cabinet just over 2 weeks ago, I chose to invite Rabbi Matisoff, Alberta's senior rabbi, to bring the invocation, to bring his rabbinical blessing for Alberta's new government. And he was accompanied by the Rebbetzin. And he gave me, and actually he had me, typical of Chabad, right there in the swearing in. He broke the protocol, and he presented the lieutenant governor and I with a pushka box. And I had to dig into my pocket and contribute to the pushka right there in Government House. Well done, Rabbi. And I am proud to tell you that pushka box, that Chabad pushka box, sits on the Premier's desk, and if any of you visit me there, you're expected to leave a contribution. And inspired by the work of Joe and Leket, I want to announce tonight that, in fact, the rabbi's told me he's going to provide us with pushkas for all of our ministers and all of our MLAs, and I am designating as the recipient of the contributions from those pushka boxes in the legislature, the Calgary and Edmonton food banks in the spirit of Leket Israel. So thank you again to the Thals for their remarkable leadership, which is so justly being recognized tonight. But most importantly, thank you to the Jewish National Fund for its 7 decades of work as the caretakers, the custodians of the promised land of ages. As it says in Isaiah chapter 35, the desert will rejoice and flowers will bloom in the wastelands. The desert will sing and shout for joy. It will be as beautiful as the Lebanon mountains and as fertile as the fields of Carmel and Sharon. And it is true that as we've just celebrated Yom Ha'atzmaut, the birth of the modern state of Israel, that what we really celebrate is a remarkable story of adversity, of strength overcoming adversity, of the modern state of Israel invaded 5 times by hostile neighbors, staring down everyday existential threats. To this day, when anti-Semitic fanatics rain rockets down indiscriminately to attack Israeli citizens. Why? For the sole crime of being Jewish. The same pernicious and ancient hatred which has motivated anti-Semites for centuries and for millennia. But what Israel says to those fanatics, to those haters, to those anti-Semites, is that the people of Israel and the dream of a Jewish nation will never be vanquished. And what your contributions to JNF now and every time of the year say is that Israel will continue to blossom and flourish as the garden of the Middle East, as the cradle of democracy, as a society that welcomes people and protects them as the Jewish homeland. And so I am proud to stand with you in support of JNF and of the democratic Jewish homeland of the state of Israel, just as I did in the 10 years of Prime Minister Harper's government. And let me tell you, I want to advertise this because some unpleasant things were said about me in the recent campaign. So I want to be clear with you about my deep and abiding affinity, friendship, solidarity with the Jewish people. I was proud as Minister of Multiculturalism to seek and obtain Canada's membership in the International Task Force for Holocaust Commemoration, Education, and Research, to make Canada a leader in that important work, and to be the first minister in Canadian history to recognize the injustice of the wartime Jewish immigration restrictions, the none is too many policy of the St. Louis era. I was also proud to host in that capacity the summit of the Interparliamentary Coalition on Combating Anti-Semitism in Ottawa several years ago, which developed the Ottawa Protocol, which has now become the normative definition of anti-Semitism, which identifies efforts which unfairly single out the Jewish state for opprobrium as acts of anti-Semitism. And I was the first minister of any government in the world to sign it. And I'm pleased to announce that I will be introducing into the Alberta legislature a motion committing the government and the legislature of Alberta to affirming and recognizing the Ottawa Protocol definition of anti-Semitism. I was also proud to implement a zero-tolerance policy towards domestic anti-Semitism as Minister for Multiculturalism, which meant removing funding, federal funding from a number of organizations, amongst them Palestine House, whose leadership had not only condoned, but it had expressed vile, extreme, and anti-Semitic comments. I was sued for those actions of defunding those organizations, but I will take, as Premier of Alberta, the same position if there is any organization which excuses or engages in anti-Semitic hatred. They will never receive funding from the government of Alberta or any of its agencies. Some of you may recall, I even, as Minister of Immigration, ensured that the notorious British anti-Semite and funder of the Hamas terror organization, George Galloway, was not permitted to enter Canada, and stood with students on campus, as has been mentioned, who are at the front of the battle against BDS. And in fact, I introduced a motion that was passed in the House of Commons recognizing the boycott, divest, and sanction movement against Israel as being animated by anti-Semitic sentiment. And we will continue to do that here in Alberta. Finally, I also implemented the federal security infrastructure project, which provided hundreds of grants of up to $100,000 to synagogues and Hebrew schools and other vulnerable community institutions which are targeted by hate-inspired violence to help to harden their security infrastructure. And I'm pleased to announce to you that we will be replicating that with an Alberta security infrastructure project to help provide the necessary funds for the Jewish and other vulnerable communities to keep their people safe from hate-inspired violence. And I was also, in the Harper cabinet, we were known as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, as Israel's best friend around the world. I was proud of that, to be part of that government. In fact, John Baird once, I was always outflanking John Baird for my Zionism, and he nicknamed me the Honorable Member for Calgary Likud, which I took as a badge of honor. And so let me say, I want to announce that I look forward to being the first Premier of Alberta in our province's history to lead an official Government of Alberta visit, trade mission to the State of Israel. So with that, thank you so much to JNF. Thank you all of you as donors and sponsors. Thank you to the Thals for their leadership, and Mazel Tov on their recognition. May the Jewish homeland go from strength to strength. Thank you. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you. And that's the words I'm going to say is thank you for your words. Thank you for your support. Most importantly, thank you. Although, sir, I'm going to be honest. I mean, you were just as advertised, which is just wonderful for us too. So thank you very much, and so much more so. I'd now like to call upon a friend and mentor, Aaron Bickman, member of JNF board and past president, as well as Ariella Benjamin, immediate past president, for a special presentation.